The United States has just crossed a line that could redefine the economic Cold War between Washington and Beijing. In a move that stunned global markets, the Pentagon has officially designated Alibaba, BYD, and Baidu as companies that support China's military. These are not obscure defense contractors. Alibaba dominates Chinese e-commerce. Baidu powers China's internet search industry. BYD has become the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer, selling more EVs than Tesla in several recent quarters. And that's what makes this story so significant. Because Washington is no longer targeting only Chinese military firms. It is now targeting some of China's most successful civilian champions. The question is simple. Is America trying to slow China's military rise? Or is it preparing for a much broader economic confrontation? And the answer could shape the future of global trade, technology, and supply chains for years to come. To understand why this matters, we need to look at what actually happened. The Pentagon updated its annual list of what it calls Chinese military companies. The list now contains 188 firms, up from 134 in 2025. Companies on the list are not automatically sanctioned, but they face growing restrictions. Under rules taking effect later this month, entities on the list and their subsidiaries will be barred from consideration for U.S. defense contracts. The Pentagon argues that these firms contribute to China's military-civil fusion strategy. That strategy seeks to integrate civilian innovation, research, artificial intelligence, robotics, manufacturing, and advanced technology into military development. China strongly rejects the accusation. Chinese officials called the move discriminatory and accused Washington of stretching the definition of national security. Alibaba and Baidu also denied any military links and vowed to challenge the designation through legal channels. At first glance, this looks like another chapter in the US-China technology rivalry. But beneath the headlines, three much bigger developments are unfolding. The first revelation is that Washington is expanding the definition of what counts as a national security threat. 10 years ago, U.S. policymakers focused primarily on Chinese defense contractors and weapons manufacturers. Today, the focus has expanded dramatically. Artificial intelligence companies can become military assets. Robotics firms can become military assets. Cloud computing platforms can become military assets. Even electric vehicle manufacturers can become military assets because the technologies they develop often overlap with military applications. Look at BYD. Most people know BYD for electric cars. But modern EV production requires advanced batteries, semiconductor systems, manufacturing automation, sensors, and software. Those same technologies can have strategic military value. The same logic applies to Alibaba's cloud infrastructure and Baidu's artificial intelligence research. Washington increasingly believes that in the 21st century, military power and commercial technology cannot be separated. And if that assumption becomes official U.S. policy, many more Chinese companies could find themselves under scrutiny. But that leads directly to an even bigger question. The second revelation is that the blacklist may be less about punishment and more about signaling. The timing matters. This announcement arrived less than a month after President Donald Trump met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. That summit aimed to stabilize relations after years of trade disputes, technology restrictions, and strategic rivalry. On the surface, the two governments appeared to be lowering tensions. Yet this blacklist expansion sends a very different message. Washington wants Beijing to understand that diplomatic engagement does not mean strategic trust. The United States may be willing to negotiate on tariffs, trade flows, and economic cooperation. But it remains deeply concerned about China's technological and military trajectory. That creates a complicated reality. Both countries want economic stability. Neither country wants a direct confrontation, yet both continue taking actions that signal long-term competition. In other words, the summit may have reduced the temperature, but it did not change the underlying rivalry. And that rivalry becomes even more complicated when we examine who these companies actually are. The third revelation is that America faces a practical problem. It depends on many of the companies it is criticizing. This is where the story becomes far more complicated than political slogans. Alibaba operates one of the world's largest digital ecosystems. Baidu remains a major player in artificial intelligence development. BYD has emerged as a dominant force in global electric vehicle production and battery manufacturing. Many international companies already maintain deep commercial relationships with Chinese firms across technology, logistics, manufacturing, and consumer markets. National security expert Dennis Wilder summarized the challenge bluntly. He argued that broad sanctions often struggle because businesses continue working with targeted companies unless governments impose meaningful penalties. That exposes a contradiction. Washington wants to reduce dependence on strategic Chinese technologies, but global supply chains remain deeply interconnected. A modern smartphone, electric vehicle, battery system, or AI platform often involves components, software, research, or manufacturing spread across multiple countries. Untangling those relationships takes years, not months. And the larger the blacklist grows, the harder that process becomes. Which brings us to the broader implications. For China, this decision reinforces a belief that the United States seeks to contain its rise, not simply manage security risks. Expect Beijing to accelerate efforts to achieve technological self-sufficiency and reduce reliance on American suppliers. For the United States, the move signals a continued shift toward economic security. Policymakers increasingly view technology leadership as a strategic asset rather than just a commercial advantage. For Europe, Southeast Asia, India, and other major economies, the pressure will continue to grow. Many countries want access to American markets and security partnerships. They also want access to Chinese investment, manufacturing capacity, and consumer demand. Maintaining relationships with both sides becomes more difficult every year. For global businesses, the biggest challenge is uncertainty. Companies can adapt to regulations. They can adapt to tariffs. They can even adapt to sanctions. What businesses struggle with is unpredictability. And right now, the rules governing U.S.-China economic relations continue to evolve faster than many corporations can adjust. The deeper lesson is this. The next phase of competition between Washington and Beijing will not revolve around aircraft carriers, missiles, or military bases alone. It will revolve around algorithms, batteries, cloud computing, robotics, artificial intelligence, and the companies that build them. The battlefield of great power competition increasingly looks like the global economy itself, and that may be far more consequential than any single military confrontation.